record on this computer. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Councillor Glenn, and welcome to our Friday webinar, our Team Stittsville webinar. Every week, we talk to community leaders and interesting people in the community, and mostly we find out how this whole COVID-19 situation and physical distancing is affecting people in whatever they do day to day, and try to share some useful information to residents as well. I am thrilled to welcome Sergeant Moe Elmi to the call today. Hi, Mo. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me, Counselor. Very much appreciated joining you.
We'll get you to introduce yourself in a moment, but I also want to introduce Véronique Bergeron from my team. Welcome, Véronique.
Hello.
She'll be helping us out with all of our chat and Q&A and some of the technical things on the webinar. So I wanted to talk about that before we dive into the conversation. First of all, if you're new to Zoom and you're watching us on a desktop or a laptop computer, up in the upper right corner, you can toggle between speaker view and gallery view. I prefer the gallery view for this because you can see everybody on the screen at the same time, and it's a little less confusing and your screen won't jump around. So gallery view is what I prefer. There's some buttons on the bottom of your screen for chat and Q&A. So we'll be using the Q&A. If you have a question that you'd like to ask to Sergeant Elmi, you can fill out your question in that Q&A, and Vero will be moderating those and bringing your questions to us later in the call, throughout the call. So any questions that you have about policing, you can ask through the Q&A. We also have a chat window going, and feel free to take part in a chat with the rest of the people on this call. We may share some links or information if it comes up over the course of the conversation as well. And we'll try to make this as interactive as we can as we go here. So why don't we get started? I think a good place to start Sergeant Elmi, is tell us a little bit about your background as a police officer and your role in the community.
Well, thank you very much again for having me. And I'm very happy to meet everybody virtually, obviously. Looking forward to the days where we can actually meet in person and say hello. But obviously, the situation changed a lot, the way we do business. So my name is Sergeant Moe Elmi. I am the Community Police Sergeant for the West End. Usually, actually, for your area, the Community Police Officer for your area is Constable Jason Brown, who is now redeployed to Frontline. So I've been a police officer for 14 years now. I've worked for the organization also as a civilian. My main background is actually working in community policing. I've worked as a school resource officer. I've also worked as a community police officer before I was promoted. Obviously, I'm a big believer, and as an organization, even we're very much big believers of community policing and the way we can do partnership and work as a community to address any issues that do occur in our community. So mainly, yeah, I enjoy community policing, and this is one of the reasons why I'm the sergeant for the West.
So what does that look like even, let's say, before this whole physical distancing, what kind of typical things would a community police officer do?
Typically, for community police officers, is we're your advocate. When you look at every community, almost every community within Ottawa has a community police officer assigned to it, and a lot of we're your advocate in terms of if there's issues, let's say if there's issues that are happening within the community, working obviously in connection with city councilors, community associations, a lot of the active members within within each neighborhood. We usually very much connected to it, and we bring back, let's say, if there are issues that are happening in a specific neighborhood, we would bring that back to the organization and see maybe ways we can address that issue. So it could be a simple thing as, maybe kids loitering at a park, every night, causing a disturbance, so on and so forth. So maybe we'll put together an action, a way to address that issue. But when you look at from community police officers, we are pretty much that bridge between the police and the community at large. And our voice is to also to help understand, obviously, both sides of how we can address issues that's a win-win situation.
And you're probably working with a lot of partners and kind of connecting different groups together, different stakeholders together.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So you talk about community health centers, like I was saying, obviously, if there's a neighborhood watch within the community, if there's community associations, business, BIAs, business owners, you talk about larger structures, like big malls and so on and so forth. Schools. So we do a lot of our. We're out there and bringing back also information back to the organization, saying, hey, maybe we should look at how we're doing, how are we doing policing, especially if there's crime areas or there's certain areas that things that are rising. We have to bring back to the organization and say, hey, this is what we're hearing in the community, so how do we address this?
Okay.
And likewise, if there's an information where our organization wants to bring out to the community, we also deliver that and make sure that through the partnerships we have, we deliver that accordingly.
So obviously everyone's job has changed now that we're in this COVID-19 situation and the physical distancing. How has your role changed over the past couple of months with this?
Obviously, I think everyone can relate to it. That's probably what, that's joining us. Our job, like I was saying, is for community officers. We have to go. We usually go out there into the community. So you talk about. Sorry about that. I lost you there. So you talk about. Sorry about that. Yeah. So you talk about. We're out there as a community police officers in the communities, whether you're holding an event as the councillor or a member of parliament or community associations, or let's say, parks so we're out there in person, interacting with people, finding out issues that really impact individuals and communities are large issues that really impact them. And we're hearing those issues in person and having that interaction, right? So now everything shifted into online. So that's a bit of a challenge, and of course we know, not everybody in our community has access also to technology itself, and also not everyone is familiar with technology itself. So those are some of the challenges, but everything shifted into to online, and we're doing our best to reach out to all the partners that we work with. But having said that, obviously there are some people who do not have access to the technology itself, or don't even know how to navigate through that technology. So that's the big change. And obviously our role also, we have to adapt as a community police officers, maybe even helping sometimes with in other areas within the organization.
Okay. What about like protective equipment when you're dealing with the public? What changes have you had to make there?
We have to take obviously all the precautionaries precautionaries that we can, but we do have the equipment in terms of, like, the glasses. If our dispatchers do an excellent job, maybe of flagging it. On the public itself, a lot of them are very good in terms of letting us know, if they've been affected with COVID-19, or if they suspect it, or that kind of stuff. So we've been good so far, and I think we, of course, it's a very challenging virus to deal with. So it is very much challenging obviously for our organization, just as much as it is for everybody else.
And what kind of changes have you seen in the nature of calls that you're getting? Are you seeing a decrease anywhere, or an increase, or different types of calls that you're getting as the police?
Yeah, so I was actually just talking to our crime analysts, especially for the West specifically. I mean, we're noticing about maybe 30% calls drop.
Okay.
For such as like residential B&Es, because everybody it's at home. Most people are at home now. Obviously, accidents. There's not going to be a lot of accidents because there's not a lot of driving as well, right? So we'll notice those things obviously are decreasing, but at the same time we are noticing that obviously there's more neighbor disputes in terms of like a neighbor disputes, and then you look at also increase of break-and-enters in business areas, because businesses now are closed, right? So, you know, specifically more in downtown area as well. So, one thing I would say is for sure, you know, like if we talk about from community safety perspective, if I can take a moment while we're on this,
Yeah.
is obviously safety in our community and safety itself is a shared responsibility by all of us. And what happened, obviously, this with this fire, you know, virus created, it's sometimes a challenging times for you know, for a lot of people. And I think when we look at, especially when I say there's increase of neighbor disputes, you know, people are now within a closed area, and also family disputes. That's the other thing too, within families as well. So I mean, we have to look at from, you know, from being, it's certainly challenging, but at the same time, how can we, because we don't know how long this will also stay, right? But how can we um, exercise patience? How can we make it the best we can out of this situation itself, without obviously, you know, harming those who are close to us? Because often what's happening is your neighbors are close to you, your family are close to you, and so on and so forth. So without, you know, obviously harming them, how can we do that to, you know, how can we do that to make the best out of this challenging situation?
Yeah,
Also,
I was going to say, I'm
yeah.
really glad you mentioned that, because I think it's something, as a counselor in my team, we get a lot of inquiries, and I think we see very clearly people are understandably under a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. There may be some people struggling with some pretty serious mental health situations as well. And we see that anxiety and that stress manifests itself in a lot of ways. And I'm sure you must see that too as a police officer. And I think what you've just said there is around kindness and empathy, and trying to understand what people might be going through. People are processing this and dealing with this in so many different ways, and so many different family situations that people might be in. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Mhm. Yeah, and also there's a lot of resources. You know, there's a lot of
Yeah,
resources that are available. You know, of course, maybe not in person, but online. So, you know, you look at the Ottawa Human Task Force, for example. You know, it's one, you know, almost like one-stop shop. There's a lot of services that are available there for you know, that can help people navigate through this challenging times. Also, while staying on safety, driving, you know, we live in our neighborhoods, right? So now there's not a lot of traffic on the road. So, people are more saying, and sometimes it's, you know, we got used to uh, going with the flow of traffic, right? There's a lot of cars back in the days, a few months ago, I should say. You know, there's enough traffic that, sometimes when someone picks up, they run, you know, obviously there's traffic in front of them. But now we're looking at situations where, especially in a lot of the rural areas, it's almost empty roads.
yeah.
But that stuff is also very dangerous, and we have to, especially with, if we have young, youth, a lot of youth, if we have some youth who are going out for driving, we have to be careful that we don't put ourselves at risk, and we don't put also other people at risk. So we're noticing that people driving obviously very fast, and a lot of it is because now they have open roads, and they're not thinking about the consequence for it.
Yeah, and we have more people out walking and cycling than ever, because people are at home and looking for some fresh air and exercise. And I actually saw police were doing some enforcement on John Woods. I think they were looking for stop sign infractions by the look of it. So I was glad to see that proactive enforcement out there. And we keep reminding people too, if you see people who are speeding through your neighborhood or ignoring stop signs, the right way is to go to the Ottawa Police .ca website, and there's a reporting form you can use there. And I know that police use that to target where that enforcement happens. So I wanted to mention that. We'll add the link after the webinar as well to the video.
No, absolutely. Make the right call, and like you said, counselor, like we have now people are actually using the actual roadways to walk, because of the, to respect that physical distance.
Yeah,
So, if people are driving, if you're driving pretty fast and you come around that corner and you didn't see that individual, that's a pretty dangerous event for that person who was just going for a walk, right? But we have to be mindful, we have to be very mindful of our neighborhoods and where we live. And quite often we see, sometimes people think people come from outside. People that are speeding come from outside the neighborhood, but
Yeah.
often it's not the case. It's actually people living in the community that are doing this. So like I said, it's a shared responsibility and safety. The safety of our community. So make the right call. You can go on our website. You can report it, and also that's how we move our resources as well, to wherever we see an issue in terms of an increase of, let's say, if we see it, speeding is an issue in certain area. That's how we can say maybe we'll have to move some officers from this area into this area so they can so we can deal with the issue accordingly. So I urge all of you, just go to ottawapolice.ca and make those and make the right and make that report.
Now, I have a lot of questions, but I just want to remind people who are tuning in, if you have any questions, they don't have to just be about the COVID-19 situation, but any questions about policing. We'll try to take as many as we can as we go through here. But this is really interesting so far. Vero, are there any that you wanted to bring up, or as part of this
Yeah,
part of the conversation? Or?
we have one question. I was waiting to see if the topic came up before I asked it. So it doesn't have anything to do with COVID, but it is a question from Neil, asking about home security cameras and drones, like how people are using them on their private properties and sometimes looking into other people's property. And Neil was asking if Sergeant Moe thought there should be a bylaw against that. And it reminded me like of an accessory question. I know that in our work, Glenn, like we've noticed maybe an increase of people being concerned about, like, because they're home all the time, like those privacy issues. Like, let's say you have a neighbor with a drone or a security camera, but now you're home full time. So maybe it wasn't so much an issue when you were working all day, but now that you're home full time, we've heard more complaint about noise, like people's wind chimes and things like that, like where they're irritants and their concerns that are maybe not day-to-day concern when people are working, but when people are home full time, they become more salient. But I was wondering about that personally, and then Neil was asking us also about drones and private drones and security cameras, if you think there should be a bylaw or more regulations around that.
Was that for me or was that for Glenn?
Well, maybe if you want to comment first, I may have some thoughts as well. But
yeah, sure. I mean, I just want to say that's a very good question by Neil, honestly, and we see that a lot, especially now the days of the digital world. But what I can say is, from neighborly perspective, we have to look at, we still have to respect people's privacy, and I always say that, even the way we situate our cameras, the way you put your cameras. You have to allow people to enjoy their property just as much as you want to enjoy your own property. You're very much concerned for your own property, but also, don't do it at the expense of your neighbors. And it happens where people are, neighbors sometimes don't agree on certain issues. But at the same time, we don't have to take it to a level where we can be civilized about it. And if you want to protect your, property, sure. But and we always say this, that honestly, don't the way you position your cameras, the way you're doing a lot of these other things, you have to be mindful of. Don't do it at the expense of the other person, because they have the right to also to enjoy their property just as much as you want to enjoy yours. And the situation with the drone, obviously, it's an evolving situation that's it wasn't there for a very, very long time. But drones, but at the same time, I'm sure laws will change around it, and I can look into it further. But whenever bylaws and laws like that have been drawn, obviously it's mainly falls within the city world. So maybe I'm going to let the council take a shot at this one.
Well, I was going to mention, drones in particular. There's a lot of federal regulation and federal law that surrounds that about how you can use them, where you can use them. And I know we do get from time to time inquiries in our office about drones, and we always encourage people to make sure if you're operating a drone to familiarize yourself with those federal rules, because they're actually related to aviation and really with the mind of safety first, in addition to privacy. But I think you're right on. it's now more than ever important to have that consideration of neighbors, whether it's around privacy or whether it's around noise. I think a lot of times it can be unclear to people about who they call on some of these things. For example, a noise complaint is usually dealt with a call to 311, and Ottawa bylaw will show up and help. But bylaw and police kind of work hand in hand in tandem to try to make sure that any of these issues are being addressed and making sure that people's safety is paramount in the city. Any other questions you want? I've got a few questions for Moe, but Veto, I want to make sure we get any of our audience members. Any others that you wanted to bring up now, or? I think you're muted there.
Yeah, no, I was like, the space bar doesn't always work for unmuting. No, that was the only question we had in the question box at this moment, so you can go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask about that enforcement and who's responsible for what, because I know at the city level, we have a lot of people saying, I see a business operating that is not on the province's essential list, and that's a call to 311, and Ottawa bylaw will have a look at that. Or if people see, I don't know, a large party happening at a park or something like that, again, bylaw at 311 within the city level. But I know Ottawa Police are involved in some of the enforcement around some of the COVID-19 regulations. But can you talk a little bit about that? When should people be calling police about an issue, and what kind of incidents are you responding to specific to the COVID-19 situation?
Very good question. So honestly, 311 right now, it's bylaw that's doing a lot of the enforcement.
Yeah.
A lot of the enforcement has been done by bylaw. But having said that, we do work as a team, and as of course, like I said, safety in the community is a shared responsibility, and we're part of the community as an organization. So large gathering, for example. There have been cases where, especially when the weather was nice at some weekends, where we had before a lot of the beaches were closed, like Petrie Island and those stuff. We did have some congregations of people not respecting the physical distance. So we do help in when bylaw needs us as a support. But our role, and as far as the organization's direction is, of course, we really do a lot of education, and I think people are under a lot of stress, and I'm talking about the public, and of course, almost from everywhere. So we do a lot of education. At the same time, there is a process for us to go through before we actually take the next step of laying charges. But all options are on the table, and we have to look at, this is a very serious issue, and it should be treated as such. Obviously, large gathering and so on and so forth. If bylaw it's going and they really need our help, we do support them.
I know there's some information shared. It was either late last week or earlier this week about bylaw, and that's the same approach they're taking. Is it's education first, making sure people understand. But if there's a continuing issue at a particular park, that's when they would issue a ticket. But there have been thousands of calls into 311 with concerns about people following the rules around physical distancing. But the actual number of tickets issued has been pretty tiny as a percentage, I guess. So. Sounds like it's the same approach for police there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to bring up one thing because it was something that Dr. Etches mentioned at our city council meeting the other day, and it was about what they're looking for in the community around things like violence against women and child protection. Now, there was a new service that was launched last week, Unsafe at Home Ottawa. It's a website chat or a text chat. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, about any thoughts that you have about some of those concerns, some of the more vulnerable members in our community, and what we can look out for as neighbors and as residents, I guess.
When you look at from everyone is obviously isolated, or not, especially with the physical distance, right? And there, when you look at domestic situations, when you look at even child abuse as well, even with cases that were involved with CAS and so forth, a lot of these times, when you look at, sometimes the kids had they had an opportunity to go to school, and sometimes the teacher will notice, or someone within, a safe adult will notice something might be off, and from there, obviously, the process starts, and that child might get the help that they need. Same thing also goes for when you look at domestic issues, where you have individuals, who obviously are harming their loved ones, the ones that are close to them. And now these people are actually confined in a closed environment where, families are not visiting. Obviously, people are not visiting the house as much. You have so many different situations that these people are in with this person who is not a very nice person, right? And so as neighbors, maybe you're the closest person to this family who are struggling or going through this situation. So I said, even in your walks, while you're having your walks, if you notice something strange or something doesn't add up, you can always report. And there's a lot of ways where you can report, obviously incidents. You can do it by phone. You can do it by obviously online, and it doesn't harm us. Or even if you feel that it needs to be a 911 call, it doesn't harm for us to come and look at the situation, assess it, and our officers, our frontline officers, of course, are very much trained in a lot of ways and have a lot of training that obviously the average person doesn't. And they've seen a lot of these situations many times, so they can best assess it and make a judgment on which way to go. But the point I want to make is that we have now some of the most vulnerable people in our community, perhaps locked in their homes or isolated in their homes, and perhaps people are not and people will not be visiting the houses. So you as a neighbor, or you as a person that lives in that community, is the one perhaps that could, that can be that help. For the website, it's ottawapolice.ca. The phone number, actually, it's on it as well. Forgive me as I bring it up. So for even there's sometimes where people don't have a chance to maybe to call. And I'm talking about people who are in challenging situations, if they are, of violence and abuse. So it's a text chat. So if the person goes onto ottawapolice.ca, it's on there, like the number 2, and it goes into unsafe at home Ottawa chat, which again then it's generates to it comes to our the police itself. So yeah, if you go to ottawapolice.ca, and there's a lot of good information, a lot of good tips of how you how you're able to to help someone who's in that situation, there's a lot of good information, honestly, on it. So I urge if to take a look at it whenever you have a chance.
Yeah, we had a great chat, I guess, last week with Michelle Hurtubise from the Western Ottawa Community Resource Center. And I think one of the things that we heard very clearly, there's a lot of resources available, a lot of people there to help if folks need it. And the Ottawa Police website's a great way to find those phone numbers and so on. I wanted to, I know we've probably got some kids who will be watching this, and maybe some kids who are thinking that policing might be a career for them. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about if someone's interested in becoming a police officer, what kind of advice or what could they be doing right now to get ready for a career like that?
Okay, so a very good question. And first of all, obviously policing is it's an honorable profession. It's a way also you can give back to your community, and serve others. So for children or for young people who are aspiring to become police officers, I would say obviously education first. Education, go to school for sure. Finish high school. Obviously, if you can get a post-secondary education, get a post-secondary education. At the same time, volunteer and give back to the community. In whichever way that you can, and it doesn't have to be one specific way. It's whatever that you enjoy. There are so many people in our communities that that really can benefit from some of the energy, especially from our young people, some of the energy that they have, whether it's volunteering at whether it's volunteering at the at a senior home, whether it's volunteering at a community center, whether it's volunteering at your local school. So there's so many ways to give back. So for sure, I would say, certainly focus on your education, select good friends, surround yourself with good friends, surround yourself with people that, that will help you achieve that goal or dream that you want to join, that you want, whatever you may want to become. And if it is policing, certainly, choose good friends, always, and always, have that in your mind in whatever that you do, that if it's something that's going to prevent you from becoming, obviously, joining or becoming, stay away from it. But certainly education, volunteering, having good friends, and working towards that goal itself. So, and step by step. Once you get all those, I mean, everything else should come together.
What do you enjoy the most about being a police officer?
It's a very good question. There's a lot of things, honestly, I enjoy about policing. I don't think I can sum it with just one thing. But I would say for me, it's obviously serving, honestly, our community, and working, me coming across with with many different people, helping people in many different ways. But for me, it's serving others. That's what I enjoy the most about it. And policing obviously has its challenges as well, but I can tell you that every single police officer that joined, in general, joined because they want to make a difference in the community that they that they live in or work. And people forget often that police officers, we are part of the community. We live there. Our children go to school there. This is where we play in sports. This is where our friends live, our parents live. So, many times, I think people tend to forget that, but I can tell you, every police officer that joins is there to make a difference, and to make a difference, and do a pretty good job in terms of working hard, coming in to contribute the best the way they can.
Yeah. We're almost at our time, but I wanted to go back over to Vero in case there were any other questions or comments we've received from our viewers here today.
We don't have more questions in the question box, but I just wanted to bring up a comment in the chat box from Janet, who said she doesn't have a question, but she wants to say a big thank you to the Ottawa Police for serving our community very well. So there's some gratefulness in the community for the job that you do, and this is great.
And we thank the community, honestly, for always working with us, and always honestly, we can't thank the community enough to adhering to some of the regulations or the emergency acts that were put out. Majority of the people are adhering to it. Majority of the people are respecting it, and we can't, and we know it was a short time, but we don't take it for granted, their trust and the respect and the honor and that the community bestow on us as police officers to serve. So I want to take a moment and say thank you for giving us that opportunity to serve and to do the best we can.
Well, it goes both ways, and I think especially this week, in light of the tragic events that we saw in Nova Scotia earlier in the week, just a reminder of the difficult and dangerous work that you do. And I think on behalf of the entire community, I thank you to you and your colleagues, and our thoughts are with the RCMP in Nova Scotia as well.
No, certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we are going to wrap it up, but before we do, I want to say, Sergeant Elmi, is there any other messages or any other information that you wanted to share with the community today?
Yeah, no, thank you. So, if I may, and I know I talked a lot, but safety, obviously, like I just want to, go back to it and say, safety in our community, even beyond this pandemic situation, Safety in our community is a shared responsibility. I urge every single one of us to contribute to the best of our ability, whatever we can do. And we all have to really, take the opportunity to make our communities better in whichever way we can, and the contribution has to come from all of us. So I urge all of you guys, every single person that's here, and if they share share it with your friends, make the right call. If you see something and you want to report it, there's a lot of options for you to report it. And if you don't report it, for example, if there's a traffic issue within your neighborhood, and you end up and you don't take the time to report it, thinking that somebody else is going to report it, then technically, if we complain among each other, then that incident hasn't happened because no one has put a report in, right? So I urge let all of us take obviously the responsibility to make our community safer. That'll be my last words.
Okay, well said, well said. I really appreciate your time today. It's always a treat to talk to you, especially when we're talking, constructively, and sometimes our conversations aren't always over the nicest incidents, but I'm glad we had the chance to talk today, and I hope we can do this again sometime. And merci Vero for managing our chat and our Q&A, and thank you to everyone who tuned in today. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but I've got my dog here in the next to me, and he's making a lot of noise here. I think he wants to chat as well. We do have some upcoming webinars next week. Here, he just wants to be. He's just a camera hog. There, say hello, Ross. This is Roscoe. Anyway, we do have some webinars coming up next week. We're going to do these every Tuesday and Friday. And on Tuesday, we have a number of local business leaders lined up. We're going to talk about how they're adapting their businesses and what effect this has had on them. On Friday, we have Dr. Vera Etches, who's going to do a special Q&A for Stittsville residents, and she'll bring us all the latest updates on public health. And we've got another number of webinars in the works for the coming weeks as well. You can go to my website and just look on the main page on the panel there. You'll see a link for the webinars, and you'll see how you can register for any of the upcoming events over the next few weeks. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you very much. Be safe, everyone. Bye.